We're so excited to have you.
I'm very happy to be here.
Did your other thing tire you out? No, nah?
No, I got a bit of a break because I had about 40 minutes. I think they wrapped up at
Hmm.
around 10. So I'm good.
Oh, good, good, good. See, it's chai, crime, and cozy, so I've got chai.
Ah,
Yes, right. So, we'll do the formal welcome for like a minute, okay? Um, Everyone, good evening. On behalf of the undergraduate writing program, we are delighted to have Anuja Chauhan speak to us today, the one and only Anuja Chauhan. So, when we usually say such and such needs no introduction, we usually mean ab dena padega introduction iske baad, okay? But with Anuja, you know that that's literally true, right? Everyone knows and loves Anuja Chauhan. I've read all her books. So instead of doing the regular intro, we all know the names of all our books. And because there's a quiz later on, guys, um, if you successfully answer the questions, you're going to win books, right? So we're not going to do the whole bio note thing. Instead, I'm going to tell you a little confessional story about how Anuja came into my life. Okay, it was 2008, and I had just begun writing what later became The Vague Woman's Handbook, my first novel, but I had no idea what I was doing, right? And then the Zoya factor came. I remember buying it, and I buy books all the time. So, remembering exactly where I bought it from Om Bookshop PVR Priya. And it was a sunny afternoon when I bought it. And I went straight home and started reading it. The next day, I called in sick, okay, just so I could finish the book. And, to me that was my moment. It's like how we teach you guys to do your literature survey and find the gap, right? Reading Anuja, that was my literature survey. I knew that this is the tradition in which I wanted to belong. Look at this voice, it's so original, it's so funny. And then I read it the second time and I laughed just as loud, and I was on a bus and I was laughing at the book. It was just hilarious, right? So ever since, I've read everything Anuja's written, and it feels equally wonderful then to have students who read and love you, right? So today what we've done, Anuja, is that I am just literally the moderator here because our students are smarter than us. You know that. You're in Ashoka mum twice over, right? They're smarter, so they're going to ask the questions and they're going to talk about the book. Okay?
wow. Lovely.
Yeah? Okay. So we have the order prepared. Okay, guys? I'm going to ask Aditya to begin. Aditya, do you want to ask the first question?
Yes, I'd love to. Good evening. Very nice to meet everybody. So my first question was, obviously the book works really really well as a detective novel, and so sort of the question I had was, it's lovely to see how things untangle as we read it. How do they get tangled in the first place, though? Is it a process of like reverse engineering once you have a climax in mind, or is it different?
First, hey, listen, I really like your wallpaper. My daughter has the same one. It's really nice. No, but yeah, like when I write a romance, which is all I've written before this, I pick out one love interest, the other interest. There's a boy and a girl. So far, that's what I've written. And there are these two people who are they falling in love. So similarly, in the Whodunit, what I tried again, there was like there's a murderer and there's a murderee, and these are the two people, and you have to figure out what's going on between these two people. You have to be very sure of that graph. So that is the thing, the spine that you hold on to, the relationship between these two people. So that was what I had in common from what I'd written before. Obviously, it's a parallel you can't stretch very far because these two relationships are very different. No matter how much hate there is in your love story, this is a whole different thing. But that was what was common, and that was what I hung on to. It was difficult, because you first have to do this whole backstory in your head even before you start writing. There's this other whole story that you put down separately. So the structure felt more three-dimensional than a love story, because there was this other stuff that was backstory that I then had to feed in later cleverly, one here, one there, one there. trying to be clever. So before I start writing, I had to have a lot of stuff figured out in my head already. So like a different file called, like the murder plot. That's a different story versus when you start writing your first chapter and people are going on merrily in a car to play tambola. That is not actually where the work started for me.
Right. Right. That's really interesting because structuring is something we talk about a lot when we talk about writing. So just swooping in, you know, how different was it then from how you write the other novels,
Yeah.
the rom-coms, right? Is that
Yeah.
more instinctive, or do you also have a parallel folder there too?
I don't have a parallel folder there. I did not have to. I've had parallel folders for movie screenplays that I've written. Because in that, it's very important that there's a backstory, and that as the front story plays out, you take bits of that backstory from the other folder and seed it in here, there, everywhere. So it felt more like a screenplay and less like a novel in that sense. So that was different. There's a little more maths and a little more logic in this than in the romance writing, which is you wake up every morning and you also can't wait to find out what happens. So you open your
Right.
laptop and start typing. So in this,
Right.
they were a little more structured for sure.
Right. Right. Okay. So next question. We'll do one round, then we'll open it up to the audience, and we'll have that fun quiz so you can win books. Okay. Lots going on here. Sakina, do you want to ask your question? Oh, okay. I forgot to, because I'm very vague. I forgot to introduce Aditya, so I'll do it now after he's asked his question. Aditya is a proud nerd and he loves cats and he escaped Fiji. Yes, Fiji, and is in Ashoka now. Okay. So now we have Sakina. Sakina is logging in from Bombay. Yes, I can see Sakina. Sakina is a keen photographer. Sakina is a great reader. And Sakina is going to do sociology. Right? Yes. Okay. Ask your question.
So I think throughout the book I was like gasping and like laughing at the same time. So my question is related to that. So like I feel like the humor was so seamlessly weaved into like more of the darker, the macabre scenes. So how do you manage to do that like without taking away from the seriousness of the scene, right? Like making audiences invested but also making them laugh. Like for example, if there's a dead body and you're also making the audience laugh, like how does that work?
That's I think that's a very time honored way of doing things, the whole black humor space. But I think that my mentality little bit is like that. Now I'm 50 years old. A few people have died on me in my life. And I find that when these things happen, when things get grim or, in your life, that humor is an amazing coping mechanism. It's a way to release the tension. It's a way to regain perspective, to pull back a little from what's happening. To me, in a murder novel or a place where death is happening, to me, humor seems to have a very legitimate presence. It has a role. It definitely has a role to heighten the, of course, as a writer, then you use it as a tool to heighten the darkness, to puncture that tension of the thing by some absurd little remark when everything is so this thing. And as a writer, you feel it's gotten too dark and too grim. I need to lighten this up, so you use it like that. As a writer, of course, you use it like a tool. But in life, I think it's just a coping mechanism when things get dark. So I was just using it instinctively like that.
Thank you.
Okay. Next question. Partvi. Meanwhile, guys, audience, if you have questions, you can type in the chat box. Okay. I'll keep looking at that too. Partvi Singh, psychology, probably, or sociology. She hasn't decided yet. She is very, very organized. I know that.
Okay, hi. It's so lovely to have you here. And my question is related to the way you write your characters, because I should confess, the first time I fell in love was actually with the character you wrote. So with this novel, I mean, the way, you've grounded these characters in reality, whether it's a Bambi Todi or a Kashu Dogra, and they're so consistent across the novel. So I wanted to ask, how do you ground these characters to be so real when, their environment is a bit absurd at times? Because it makes them very relatable and it captures the zeitgeist of what being in Delhi is like.
See, it's important to know your character well. So before, again, like earlier, I was talking about how you have a back folder for the plot, like for this book I had. You also have maybe a parallel folder for your characters. It's very important, again, before you start writing, figure out who this boy is, who this girl is, what the hell is going on over here. So, the whole backstory of their little romance, how, she gave him her whatever that thing to blow up in the swimming pool when they were both 5 years old, and that's how they met. And so you figure out this boy is, his dad's in the army, he's not very wealthy, but because his dad was like a senior officer, he'd have been posted in these posh places, therefore he had an opportunity to study in a school like this PVVS school that we've made up, like an amalgamation perhaps of a VVS and a TSRS, whatever, like one of those schools. So he'd have access to this place, but maybe he wouldn't really like fit in with these people that much. And then maybe because of that obsession with discipline, he's been sent off to a boarding school, which has cost parents a lot of money. And he's got an older sister, and these are his beliefs. And so then you have an understanding of where he comes from, what his parents are like, therefore what he would be like. And only when you're very sure of him, you've got like almost like a 3D wireframe of the guy. You've made this little model, and after you quite sure about how Kashi Dogra works, how much of a fraud he is, how much of a legit idealist he is, how true is he to his beliefs, how much does he enjoy the privileges that he's born to, how much is he embarrassed by them. Once you figured out that all those fractions and combinations, then you can take him and you can drop him into the into the Delhi Turf Club, and you'll know how he'll move because you know him well. So it's important to know him well. I also spend a lot of time working on the names. For me, names are really important. Names, nicknames, little bit your ethnic roots, so where you come from, what part of the country. So for me, it was important to drop Kashi into that scene where he's getting a haircut from like a little, like a baba under a tree, and he's playing
He's from
drums with the
JNU.
tractors. Yeah,
And he's
not
from JNU.
his girlfriend's from JNU. But yeah, so
right.
you get a sense of like, ye ladka aisa hai and stuff. So it's important to spend that time and figure out that person. Once you're quite sure of what, and of course, if you know somebody like that, you have friends, if you're bouncing off reality, you have a cousin or a or anyone, somebody your brother, your friend, or your boyfriend, or your ex-boyfriend, or whatever it is, or even a a hot teacher perhaps, whatever it is, you bouncing off that person and putting them in. So that also helps. So spend time getting to know them well before you start spinning a story.
Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Anuja. Very, very wise. Devaki. I can't see Devaki for some reason. Yeah. Hi.
Yeah. Hi. So my question is sort of similar to Parthi's, but one of my favorite things about your writing has always been the way that you write conversations. I've always found them very honest and witty, and I'm sort of always left convinced that I know exactly who you're talking about, and I've known them my whole life. And so one of my other favorite storytellers is Zoya Akhtar. And she was asked in an interview once how she transforms her people watching into her films. And she said that while prepping her film Dil Dharakne Do, which like Club You to Death deals with the same very privileged, posh section of society, she said that one of the things she did was she went to a bunch of weddings in Delhi, and she, like during Shadi season, and she was talking to all of these aunties, and she described it as fodder for her book. She said that she used to keep her notes app open and just write down all of the ridiculous things that people used to say to her, and then sort of try to transform that into her film. So my question is that do you have a similar process in the fact that you have like a folder where you like write down all of these sort of like funny conversations, or is it something that just sort of naturally flows as you're writing?
Yeah, it's a bit of both, really. I mean, like, I've happened to, without having to make it into like a field research trip, I've ended up at a lot of strange weddings and organically overheard these conversations. Maybe I've even had these conversations. I love having wide circles of friends. As I grow older, I find that I'm no longer outraged by people or angered. I'm merely entertained. I find it very, I meet people who say strange things and I'm like, oh, to fir aapne kya kaha? And it's, it's quite fun and interesting to widen your base of people who you meet. You know, I think Zoya Akhtar is has. I mean, she can do this as research. You know, set apart from her life. I think people like us, slightly more ordinary souls, we just happen to pick up notes as you go through life and meet people. And of course, it's I don't have to actually take notes. What happens with me is that there's one thing. I mean, I'm not proud of anything I have. Like, I mean, my writing is ordinary. I work hard at it. I try to make it funny. You know, my English or whatever, nothing is very good. The good thing I've got, I'm very proud of, is I have a really good memory. I have a really good memory. I remember most conversations I've had. I remember them it's something from childhood that it's something that I'm quite proud of. It's the only thing I have to flex about, saying that I remember and I'll tell you. And maybe because I was like the youngest of 4 sisters and I had 3 older sisters, and they were all very beautiful, and they always had suitors in the house. There were always boys hanging around coming to meet my sisters. And I was hanging around in the background with a little boy cut looking rather like my son does now, and listening, you know, and soaking in all the delicious cross currents that were floating around and stuff. So I really enjoy that, and I tend to remember that. And I think it is good advice to go out of your comfort zone, to go to places like posh weddings like this, for example, or into a cantonment mess, you know, if you're writing something like bars, or into hanging around with people who are not naturally your comfort zone, like, you know, like jocks from a cricket team, or I mean stuff that I picked up simply because I did so much advertising with cricketers. So you're tending to hanging around and seeing the way everything flows, and the way they talk to each other. And yeah, and if you have a good memory, you can hope to remember it, and if you don't, you can make a folder. But I think that when you start writing, your memory provides that stuff, you know, like it all goes in, and it percolates and it comes out in your writing. Vikram said calls it gathering life. He said, you know, part of the time I live in my cave, part of the time I go out and I gather life. I go and I get invited, because input is only equal to output. You can't just go in a cave and write. You also have to engage and be entertained and eavesdrop and listen and have conversations.
Thank you. Thank you, Anuja. And thank you, Devki. I forgot to introduce Devki, being vague that I am. So quickly, Devki is
Okay.
is majoring in, no, I know Anuja wants to know. She's majoring in political science and minoring in creative writing. And like me, she much prefers the world of fiction to the real world.
That's all of us.
Right? And so thank you, Devki. Guys, I hope you're taking notes, okay? She's casting a lot of pearls, Anuja is, right? Great tip. Widen the base of your acquaintances and people you hang out with, people you spend time with, and pick up. Writers are always listening and, you know, picking up conversation. So do it, right? Next question, Mukundan. Mukundan is a lapsed CA. I say that with great pride because that's how we got him to Ashoka. And he's probably going to major in economics, even though he's likely to spend all his time reading political philosophy, right? He is a professional critical thinker. I say that with great pride too. Okay, Mukundan, swoop in.
Well, thank you so much for being here, Ms. Chauhan. I must confess, I've never actually read your work before. And when Professor Roy asked me if I would read Club You to Death, I was like, what are you talking about? Because, you know, I'm one of those pretentious people who cannot really take some time off and read fiction that actually helps. I have to sit and, you know, confuse my head over Hegel or something. But I must say, with regard to the professional critical thinker thing, I kept trying to think critically, and I think I was mildly successful. But by the time I got to the end, I really couldn't think. I was just that invested in the story. And I actually went on to also read the Zoya Factor because I couldn't get enough. And I actually thought that was pretty nice. So anyway, my question really is, in that both in this novel and in the Zoya Factor, I saw that there were so many competing conceptions of masculinity, right? Just for example, you have the inspector versus the ACP, where one person is really blunt and the other person is a little more subtle. There's Kashi Dogra and the ACP, where there's almost a man versus boy dynamic. One person's confused and conflicted, and another person is so comfortable in his skin. And there's the testosterone-addled fights between Mukesh and Leo. And I'm just wondering, in general, is there an idea of positive masculinity that you have in mind while you write? And B, can there be one? And C, can a character who's like really arrogant and insecure ever be an object of romantic fascination?
Well, I guess yes. Anybody can be. It depends on what floats your boat. Anything can be an object of romantic attention or fascination. Personally, I am accused of writing heroes who are a little romanticized and don't really exist in real life and so on. The two factors that for me are important when writing like what you call a hero or like a lead is fitness and decency. These are two things I don't compromise on when I'm writing like a main boy. I think everything else you can't decide in your life. I mean, there are many other things that are out of your control. You cannot necessarily be rich, or you cannot necessarily be successful, you cannot necessarily be handsome, whatever it is that girls put out there in boxes. But I think decency and fitness is within everyone's grasp, more or less. And so that is something I don't feel guilty about putting on my heroes most of the time. When I say heroes, uh, I try to, I think I'm a little obsessed with balance. When I write a book, I try to have, like you said, different kinds of men, all kinds of masculinity represented. And everyone, perhaps because I worked on Kurkure for so long, I tend to get fond of everyone. It's I feel affectionately towards all characters. So for me, even Leo, even Mukki Khurana, or everybody, and of course Kashi and the ACP, even Padam Kumar. I mean, so what if he keeps flexing about being Chai and whatever fair and like whatever it is that he's so proud of. I mean, I get the sense that he's also got his little insecurities, and for him this is a big deal and stuff. So I think I try to show all kinds of men. I try to be as less judgmental as possible, and I'm definitely always fond of every character that I'm writing.
It totally shows. All the book have so much heart, right? Uh, Fabulous. Okay, next question. Mukundan, did you have a corollary also to the question, or a second one?
When
that I
Mukundan
missed?
says that he says that he read the Zoya Factor, yeah, definitely. I mean, Nikhil Koda is definitely unreal. He's practically like he should be in an Avenger outfit or something. Very guilty of making him like he should have had something. But hey, come on, that was my first book. And Nikhil Koda, he doesn't even have parents. Like when I was writing that book, and later on, I felt so bad that this poor boy, he has got no aga pichla. Nobody knows where he came from. He's just like hanging around brooding and wanting to win a World Cup. I think subsequently I've gotten a little better with that, I hope. But Nikhil is, I mean, like, is definitely underwritten in some ways and overwritten in some ways, I think.
Well, if Professor Roy will indulge me, Mr. Chauhan, I have a small follow-up. Yeah, so I mean, it did show that you loved all your characters equally, right? And that definitely came through. Almost all of them were multi-dimensional in one sense. But my question is more like, you see the bedrock character, the ACPs and the Nikhil Kodas, they have this aura of being put together, right? They don't need anyone else to affirm the fact that they're a man, and they don't need events in the narrative to really prove that to them. But my question is, can Padam Kumars ever be the ACPs of a story, right? Does the main character have to be this put together and this perfect in one sense?
Again, it depends on if you're writing that. For me personally, if you're asking like where I gravitate out of choice, is I for someone like that, yeah, sure, flaws are important, insecurities are important. Everybody has them. I mean, I mentioned, uh, for me, obviously, people would have insecurities and flaws. Like Nikhil tells Zoya about how conflicted he is about, just succumbing to that whole luck thing and then just going with it, and that he's had some thoughts where he's just thought he'll just go with it. ACP Bhavani can't sleep on the nights after which he sees a dead body. I mean, his wife knows that he can't sleep, and then she has to give him cold milk and tell him, please don't rock the bed because you're so irritating when you do that, and stuff. And for me, I think weaknesses and flaws are very much a part of every character. But to me, like I said, inherent decency somehow seems to be something that I need. And I know as I write more movies, and even as a lot of the like even Club You to Death, I'm in very advanced talks with the production house to make it into a series. And again, we get into the thing of the character graph, so if the ACP got to be so sorted right from the start. But the point is, unlike Nikhil Koda, the ACP is almost 60, right? So one assumes that he's already had a character graph. And when he's made this bunch of rules for himself, and he's come to the conclusion that violence is not the answer, then the hitting people will loosen their tongues, but speaking to them carefully will open their hearts. He's obviously come to this conclusion because of some research he must have done in his origin story, right? At some point that must have happened, and therefore by 60 he can afford to be a little sorted. Yes, I would want to test his weaknesses, see if he's open to any kind of bribery, or if he succumbs to pressure and stuff like that. You're right, all of that just makes a character stronger. But for me, in the kind of books I write, the eventual triumph of that character over these darker things is important. I tend to write like a happier kind of a graph and a happier kind of ending. So even if these struggles and these trials and like pulls and pushes happen, I would want, for me as a writer and usually as a reader as well, to see the character triumph.
That was all I had, and I have to say I'm very grateful for these happier arcs, especially when finals week beckons.
So, quickly, because this is one of the things we keep talking about, Anuja, in class as well. So I'm just kind of butting in, asking a question out of turn. Because you mentioned research, right? Bars was also phenomenally researched. The other books also have, one arc usually which requires a lot of research. But with Bars, you really, one could see how much research you had done. And now with Club You to Death, with ACP Bhavani and all that. So what I want to ask is, did you also hang out with a lot of cops and criminals?
No, the pandemic sort of put paid to that. All I did was manage to meet like an ex-president of the Delhi Gymkhana Club for coffee in early February last year, and that was it. After that, everything was just on the phone or what I could get. And the kind of research I did on ACP Bhavani was more to speak to some of my, friends who are in the police about things like where he would live, how much money he would earn, what year he'd have signed up, kahan se bharti hue honge, if he's almost, if he's nearing retirement, is it possible for him to be at this rank? There was softer kind of research about his background, the kind of language he would speak at home, the kind of job his wife would have, what they would be saving for. So more that kind of thing rather than anything else.
The technical and the sociological sort of aspects.
Yeah.
But what about the crime? Did you research the crime? Did you poisons, for example?
I mean, like I had Gautam Mengele, who sort of read through the whole thing, and he sort of told me if things are going very wrong, he would say that, Anuja, I don't think this is right. But mostly I think it's sort of kept it vague, so I didn't have to kill myself about it too much. For Bars, I did a lot of research. Like you said, I read a lot of nonfiction on the war, on that whole birth of Bangladesh, that whole thing. And I also had a very good person who read the whole thing and called me up saying, no, this is all wrong. this is not how a dogfight happens. And what are you reading? You've only read Commando comics. You don't know anything.
Hmm.
That was a bit more intense, and he handheld me through the whole process a lot. So yeah, so I guess here, like I said, it was like a softer sort of thing.
Right. So next question coming up, Ritika. Uh, yes, hi Ritika. Okay, Anuja, Ritika is a pol science major. We have lots of political scientists, as I can see. Um,
Mm.
you know, and Ritika does not allow anyone to touch her bookshelf. I wish I could be like this. I'm going to ask for tips later on, okay? Because people are always walking off with my books. And she's obsessed with the Marvel universe. Okay,
Mm.
over to you.
Hi, it's really nice to have you here, ma'am. So my question was a little basic. I mean, like you said, you have been writing romance novels before this, and this was your first mystery novel. So would you do it again? What were the highs and lows? What was the journey like? What was it like branching out into something that was different? You've already spoken a lot about the process, but like, did it feel really good when you saw so many people, like, praising the book and so many people enjoying it? What was it like for you?
No, it was really nice. I must say that after I finished these first 5 books that I wrote, there was this like 5 felt like a nice round number, and I thought, oh yeah, maybe I'm done, you know. And then so I was like, maybe I'll just write movies and I'll do Zumba and like that'll be my life. And so I did actually have a bit of a sense of maybe I'm done writing books. And again, then I started thinking about it, and I did a bit of a I mean, there was like a process, and then I basically decided, like what I said at the top, that the murderer and the murderee is as exciting a relationship as like a love story. And and again, I mean, I like the fact that so the two genres is similar also, and they're different also, but both give me an opportunity to examine themes that I'm into, so themes that I find interesting, or on which I feel I have something to say, and mujhe bhi kuch kehna hai and I want to put it out there. So there's that challenge. And I think what's similar between both the love stories and the whodunits is that nothing ever happens in a vacuum. Everything always happens in an ecosystem where other things are going on. You might be plotting a murder, but you might also still have to like take your mother out to get a vaccination or whatever it is you need to do. It's not like real life doesn't go away just because you want to murder somebody. So all that is still important, and all that is the stuff that I find really seductive and that I want to write about, like create little worlds for people. And obviously these worlds are maybe a little rawer and a little riper and a little darker than the romance worlds, but maybe I'm also getting older and saying that, let me just do some other stuff. So I really enjoyed it. I'm doing it again. I'm doing it again already. I have ACP Bhavani out solving another crime right now.
Oh, I was going to ask, in fact, that is
Yeah.
going to be my question.
Okay.
Yes, well, I think we all loved him, so we are all very happy to hear that. Next up is Amia. And while I introduce her, what I want to say is the fact that we actually put together the event this way was because of Amia, right? Amia was in my class and on the first, and so that stuck in my head. And then when we were discussing, when we invited you and you said yes, we thought this would be the fun way to do it, right? Instead of me asking questions, just give it over. Let the first year students, who by the way have sacrificed a great deal, right? The first year
Oh
students
God,
haven't.
you're not first years. Y'all haven't been to campus yet.
So how do we
I've been to your
sweeten?
campus several times, and y'all haven't yet visited. That sucks. Okay.
So we wanted to sweeten it a little bit for them, and so Amia took charge. She's the one who
Awesome. Wow.
effectively put together the program. Okay, Amia, does that mean you get to ask 2 questions? Maybe.
Um, I agree with Parthy. I think the first character or person even I ever loved was Nikhil Khoda, and I've always imagined him with a Avenger suit. And yeah, and I really don't think he's overrated. If anything, he's underrated. He's the best. But my question is there any character in any of your 6 books that's actually inspired by you?
Um, Several. I think there's Ishwari from Pricey Thakur Girls is, the book is set in the year 1988. In 1988, I was exactly 18 years old, and Ishwari and me are very much, she's in where she's studying in some modern school, right? And she's got this stupid boy who she sort of likes, but she doesn't like the way he talks, and he's super cheesy and a complete ass, but she sort of fancies him. So Ishwari is a lot like me, is a lot like how I was at 18. So I'm very close to her. But I also feel that I'm very close to Chachi ji from Pricey Thakur Girls. As I get older and older, I feel I'm becoming like her. And I feel I'm a lot like this character in Battle for Bitora. There is this one fellow now who goes around, I forgot what his name is now. He's this Parsi guy, and he comes from Bombay to cover the election, and he's hugely entertained by everything that happens. That character is also similar to me. So, yeah, but if you ask me specifically, then I guess it would be Ishu from Pricey is the most like I am, I think.
Right. Amir, do you want to get a quick question in and then we move on?
I was actually very interested to know what your connect with Sector 44 is, because I live there and you have given, there's a swimming pool which I've never heard of. So I was really.
I'm sure there is in sloppy research. I'm so sorry. I don't know much about Noida.
Oh,
I'm so sorry. There's no swimming pool. And HarperCollins office is in Noida. I thought they would have got that one.
I was excited to see Sector 44, and I think I'm going to pitch this to the RWA now.
Why don't we have a pool
presentation in the book?
Shit. Oh God, that's awful. It's but I mean, I just thought that a lot of my parents' friends, they're all 4Gs, and a lot of them retire in Noida. So I was more coming off from there. Yeah, that's. Yeah. Please ask your RWA to put in a pool. I won't be.
Yes, well, sometimes fiction does anticipate fact, right? It's not always the other way
around. Yes. See, Dhoni won the World Cup after I wrote the Zoya fact.
See? So, okay, next we have a fellow Bangalorean for you, Anuja. We've got Kripa Krishna. Kripa, where are you? Okay, there she is. I'm sorry, I'm kind of blind. Kripa, do you want to ask your question? Kripa is going to major in economics. So the econ guys are the serious guys on campus. Okay, we are all scared of them.
I'm an econ guy.
I'm glad to hear that. So my question was, since this was a mystery novel, I was wondering, so like we don't know about the killer, like who the killer is until the end. But when we do get to know, we kind of place all the scenes that we've read before, right? Like it all comes together. And I want to know, since you were writing it, you knew who the killer was the whole time. So how did that process work, right? Like you couldn't reveal, but at the same time you knew. Like how did that process work?
No, that was like a really sucky situation to be in, and it was new for me. That's what I was saying earlier, that I first had to make a folder before I started writing the book about what the plot was and how the murder happened and who the killer is and what was going on in the head of the killer. So that had to be done before. And it was tricky. Like, when my kids were little, I used to have birthday parties for them. And very often we would have like a treasure hunt in which I would think of clues and I would hide some treasure and I give them all these hints. And very often the kids would come back all sweaty and frustrated and say, we couldn't find it. And you put out some shitty clues and they were really obscure and nobody understood, and this was a terrible fail. And that has happened to me a couple of times. So I was very conscious of the fact that, okay, I'm hiding something and I must, for the clever reader, leave some clues that when they go back, it goes tuck, 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 and you're like, oh, okay, this makes sense, and so on. So it was tricky, and there's a lot of back and forth, you're writing chapter 16 and then you know that because what you wrote in chapter 16, you have to go back and embed something in chapter 4. So then you do that. So there was a lot of that going on. So that that separate folder that you made before you started writing the book, is important because that's where the whole master story is. And then you leak little bits of it here, there, and everywhere, so that it all comes together. So like I was saying, it was a lot more logic and a lot more math in this than in writing the romance, so it was more logically structured for sure. It's important to have that. See, you can never have that whole thing prepared. It's not like you can say, oh, I had a perfect 3D model and then I put skin and bone on it. Skin and flesh on it. That's not correct. You will need to keep going back and changing some stuff, which is fine. I mean, just do it.
Yeah. Right. So one question, Anuja, again, I'm kind of slightly putting in. You actually turned the pandemic productive, right? So while everybody else, all other writers were sitting and wasting their time binge watching and I don't know what, baking banana bread, you actually had the discipline to also write a book.
That happened because I spent the previous year doing sweet like nothing. So I've already wasted 1 year. So before I started writing, I had a wasted year behind me in which I did nothing but just I know what I did. I like whiled the whole year away. I didn't know where it went. So by January, I was pretty panicky and I was like, I have never had such a long gap between books. So I was very motivated. I'd also done a lot of thinking in the previous year. So I hadn't written anything down physically, but I'd been cooking it for a while. So I could actually just spit it out pretty fast. Also, the whole damn family was back on my head. All my 3 children, 25, 22, 19, all in the house. So I needed an escape, right? So I opened the laptop like a manhole and escaped down the drain into the book.
Right. Okay, next question is from Reha. Are you going to just sort of wave at me? Is sort of aspirational. Okay, guys, you have to. I made a note of all the things that she's going to do at Ashoka. She's going to major in pol science. She's going to minor in IR and literature. She's also going to do some creative writing, philosophy, and media studies in between, and obviously also participate in lots of literary events, right? So very inspiring, Reha.
So, I mean, I'm going to try. I make no promises. But I think thank you so much for the book, ma'am. One thing that I really enjoyed was I could see my father reflected in so many of the things, because I'm also a Fauji kid and he also puts bloody before every second line. And I would just call him and be like, Dad, this is you. So I had a lot of fun reading it. I think something that I want to ask is that I really enjoyed the nuanced interplay between providing detail and a good background setting, but also not getting lost in it so as to bore the reader. And as someone who finds it very difficult to write fiction and usually just sticks to poetry, for this similar reason that I never know when it is too much information, when it is too less, I was wondering if you had some perspective to offer on that.
I think everybody arrives at that, like it's a personal preference, right? And you arrive at it from reading. If you read a lot of books, and you'll see that, oh, there's certain people who sort of provide the necessary information quickly, efficiently, but without losing you. And that's, again, so that's something, I mean, if you look at some people do it really well, they do it really quick. And I think in detective fiction, you have to do it a lot, because every time it's the same character, but you don't know if the reader has read books of this character previously. So in a sense, a character has to be introduced every time to you, but while not boring the person who's read, like if it's Hercule Poirot, say, and you've read all the books, then you don't need to hear the whole little spiel about, the little man with the head shaped like an egg and his pointy shoes and his shiny mustache. Like, all that stuff already, right? And somebody saying the whole thing again, you're like, yeah, yeah. So, but she's mastered the art of putting it down so simply, so these are all the masters at whose feet we sit and we try to learn. I think that's important. I think advertising training also helps in that, because in advertising, I'm 17 years, I've done ads, and usually I would only be given 30 seconds to tell a story. 60 seconds is like a huge amount of time for an ad to have. So anyway, you're trained to be brief. You're trained to just provide as much as required. And I also feel it's important to, beyond the point, let the reader fill in the blanks in his head, provide enough clues and enough color, and let them spread the color and let them fill in the visuals themselves. So I don't have to like give one whole thing for you to get it. So I guess provide some vital, bright things that are not so much physical detail, but are more about mood or about atmosphere or about smell when you're talking about a place, rather than describing exactly all the little I mean, it shouldn't sound like a police description of a place, you know. You're trying, if you're trying to describe like a club, for example, then you don't have, beyond a point, you can say white pillared green grass. After that, it's better to go into more evocative stuff, you know, like the smell of the beer on a Sunday afternoon or whatever it is. I mean, like, that kind of stuff is better, and then everybody imagines their own color. And I think a good description is when the club you imagine and the club the next person imagines entirely different, because it's colored by, you're using the same clue that the writer has given, and you're building your own club in your head, and someone else is doing something similar in their own head, you know. So keep it a little vague and let the reader make it specific.
Thank you.
So I think we've done one round where all our questioners have gotten their first questions in. So take a break for a second to introduce, I can see our head of the department, Aditi Sriram. She's joined us. Aditi, do you want to say hi to Anuja? And also, you know, you started Track Changes. So if you wanted to tell us a bit about that.
Oh, well, I think this is the best version of Track Changes there is, where we have 50 plus participants all hounding an author for her critically thought out ideas and execution and amazing books. And I don't have much more to say about Track Changes besides that's exactly what we hope happens with each interaction that we have between students and someone who has written something. And in your case, Anuja, of course, that's pages and pages long in terms of the CV. And I am just another gushing fan. So I will stutter my way through saying we're so excited that you have joined us virtually at Ashoka. And I had friends in the US texting me and saying, I saw this, you know, poster on Instagram or on Facebook or wherever you put these up, Roy, and I can't believe it. Is she going to come speak? I said, yeah, and you're welcome to join. It's not a terrible time in the US if you wanted to listen in. But yeah, we are the undergraduate writing program. And our main, the main course we teach is a class called Intro to Critical Thinking. Which and I'm sorry I couldn't be here when we began, but maybe that was brought up at some point by Devapriya. But it's really asking, how does an author or how does a writer stay in control of the decisions they make? Whether, I mean, any genre that you're writing, in fiction, nonfiction, how are you intentionally putting down your thoughts? And how can you get the reader to trust you in that process? And say, here's what I'm trying to do with my ideas. I'm putting them in this order to create a certain effect. Stay with me till the end and see how that effect works for you. And then have any reaction you like, but trust me that I have thought about this and I want you to think about it too. And I mean, you're a phenomenal example of that, and you make it fun and conversational and funny. And so I'm so thrilled that you're here. And the questions from the students are a clear example that you make everyone think about what's going on, you know, in your books and through your characters and the humor and the other styles that you use. So we are all just very excited. And I'll turn it back to Devapriya and the rest of the students because they have real questions prepared. They did the homework and I did not.
Thank you, Aditi. So let's get to the fun part of the event where we, the undergraduate writing program, and HarperCollins and Anuja Chauhan together give away books. Okay, so there's a quiz, and you have to type in the answer if you want to win a copy of Club You to Death. Okay, yes. So participants, fastest fingers first. So make sure your hands are on the keyboard. Okay, Anuja, don't mistakenly participate. Okay, you might also get excited. Okay, Amia, it's over to you. You're in charge.
Okay, so the first question is, who played the role of Nikhil Khoda in the movie Zoya Factor?
Okay, we have a winner, and that is Manya Saran, who was fastest fingers first, right? Okay. Manya, where are you? Are you going to turn on your camera and sort of, you know, do a little dance?
Hello.
I'm in isolation, so I'm not in a very dancey sort of state, but thank you so much.
Well, winning a book is perfect isolation stuff, right? Let's hope we can get it to you soon.
Yeah, I hope they let it come up, but yeah, thank you so much.
Okay. Are we ready with the next question, Amia?
If anyone else in the team wants to.
Yes. Who's next?
Shall I go?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is a multiple choice question. And one of Anuja Chauhan's most famous campaigns while working in advertising, I'll give you 4 options and you need to type down the correct one. Number 1, daag achhe hain. Number 2, dar ke aage jeet hai. Number 3, taste bhi, health bhi. And number 4, isko laga dala to life jinga dala.
Oh, we have answers coming in.
Priyal. I think Priyal said the correct answer.
Priyal has typed it out, but before that, Sharmishta said number 3. Was that now?
Number 3 is taste free, health free.
Okay. So, Priyal, where are you?
Can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, Priyal.
Hi.
Well done. Wow.
Anuja, are you enjoying the quiz?
Yeah, I'm just like, wow, taste me, health me. Not a Maggie fan. But yes, it's so nice that so many people. Yeah, Priyal was so quick.
I've truly been like, I knew a lot about your advertising campaigns, like how you've worked with Pepsi and all.
Look at that. Fans, huh? Okay. Yeah. Who's next? Aditya, do you have a question?
Lots of existential ones, but I'm not really sure they're relevant here.
Okay, a quiz question.
Okay, I'll go. Which war is Bars actually related to?
Right. We got an answer bang on. Parnika. Hi, Parnika. Yes, it is the 1971 Indo-Pak War leading to the birth of Bangladesh. Correct answer. And
I'm so sorry. I just want to quickly jump in here. So Parnika and I studied in the same school, and we were in the 9th grade, and we had this habit where we would share books. And I distinctly remember Parnika sitting in the last bench, her nose buried into bars, and I would just wait and like, when are you finishing this? When are you finishing this? I want to read it, because she would have her nose buried in it all day. And the moment she handed it to me, she's like, it is so sad, and gave me the major spoiler. I was like, thanks.
I probably shouldn't say this, but my laptop password consists of bars and then some.
Oh, that's so sweet.
oh my God. Look at that. Okay. Who's asking a question next? Parthvi?
Yeah, sure. But I had a personal Anuja related question.
Hmm.
And I'll make it a 2-parter, but if like you don't know one, you know the other, or that way. Okay. So we know she went to Delhi University for her bachelor's, and since you're all undergraduates here, I thought this might be pertinent. So which college in DU did she go to? It's a very well-known college. And what was her major?
You went to Miranda. And
Yeah.
Pearl.
I think I already said what course I did in the session, but yes. Miranda House Economics.
Miranda House Economics. So we've got Radhika and Pearl. Hey guys, where are you? Okay, I can see Pearl.
Pearl's got a lot of answers right. She's just not been fastest yet.
Ma'am, so you came to my school in 10th grade. That's when I first heard you. I was in 10th and it was the year 2014. And you came to my school and that's the first time
Which school was that? Which school did I come to?
Ma'am, Bal Bharati Public School, Gangaram, Delhi.
Oh, yeah, I remember. Of course.
So, I was not made aware of your books, but I was just made to sit in this seminar that, just sit. And when I heard you, within that 1 year, I devoured all your books. And since then, I've been waiting for a chance to interact with you. And
I remember I was so happy because the stadium was so crowded. I didn't realize y'all had not read the books. I was like, wow, कितने सारे बच्चे हैं. Oh God, nobody has read the books in the crowd.
Mom, you have inspired me
So
in so
glad
many
that-
ways.
That's
Be it,
Wow.
you have made me excited for Delhi University. I'll be honest, and you made me excited for that area. I was not. Sorry, everyone. I'm so sorry, but I was not the biggest cricket fan, and the only time I have majorly enjoyed cricket, except the 2011 World Cup, was in the Zoya Factor.
Oh.
I have never been more excited about cricket other than that.
So lovely. So lovely. So nice to see Pearl so excited and happy. Congratulations. And Radhika, do you also want to just quickly say something?
Yeah, sure. I've been like a huge fan of your writing for the longest time. And I remember when Bars came out, you were doing, I think, a Twitter session where you were answering questions for an hour or so. And I remember drawing an artwork for Bars that you really liked. Apart from that, because I followed your career and I really wanted to be a writer after I read your book, I saw that you had taken up advertising and then sort of shifted to writing. So I was convinced that that's exactly what I should also do in order to write. So I also tried my hand at writing. I sucked at it. But honestly, I really love your writing. I really admire you as a person.
Thank you so much. I know, but advertising writing is nobody. I'm sure you didn't suck at it. Probably the account sucked or somebody else sucked.
Thanks.
So should we do one more question, one more last question? So guys, please be ready. Okay. Who in the group wants to ask?
Mukundan, I think.
Mukundan? Yes.
Yes, Professor. So this is since I had only one question, let's play a fun game called Two Questions on Privilege. Right? So these are two. The first question is with regard to the use of English language itself, right? And I saw this more specifically in the Zoya Factor, but also in Club You Did It. In that, when you see privileged people speaking in English and the more marginalized speaking in English, both of them Indianize it to a certain extent. And yet, when a privileged person like Bambi Todi says "chalo," it's a lot more different than when the ACP says "hum." So I just wanted to ask how you're able to pack so much nuance into essentially the same language, not even two different languages, but just the same language. And the second question on privileges, this is specific to Club You to Death, right? You see in different areas of the story, the narrator almost takes on the persona of different characters. Sometimes it's told from the eye of Padam Kumar, sometimes from the eye of the ACP, and sometimes from the eye of Kashi Dogra. It never happens with, let's say, someone like a Cookie Katoch or even like someone like a Kuhu. So as an author, how do you navigate these decisions as to what factors are relevant when you decide whose persona the narrator takes on?
I'll answer the second question first. No, I really enjoy having, having the power to get lots of people's perspectives in, and I think it's a little instinctive. Like it's a bit like being a DJ and knowing what song to play next, seeing the way the crowd is moving, and then you say, let me segue into this now or to that now. In fact, it's strange you say that, because for me, Cookie Katoch was very vital to suddenly coming in to provide that thing, like when I found her a very useful tool to say things like that. Oh, you could have cut the atmosphere with a knife, and I knew that. I said, forget that, no carbs after 7 o'clock rule, and I took out my bar and I started munching. So it's not to suddenly to pull back, almost like if you're editing a film, you cut to something and then you cut to something else, and that is when the narrative voice changes. You're providing it helps you condense time, that's one thing. It helps you keep it all and not get pulled away into some wormhole, and stay with the main narrative to keep. So it's instinctive, I think, a little. Obviously there are certain characters who at a certain point you can't get into the headspace because that might give too much away, but you can give away a little. Like there's almost a whole chapter, which is Bambi's chapter, where she's looking at herself in the mirror and she's thinking about Kashi and how much she likes him and stuff like that. And then there's certain places where you hear Kashi's voice and he's thinking about how much he loved Bambi, but not giving away many other things. So you have to be clever with that, when you're trying to do it in a murder mystery setting. But I think, like I said, it's more instinctive. It's more like editing a film or mixing music. You feel that bahut slow gana ho gaya, let's play something fast now, or like making a mixtape perhaps. That's a very retro reference, but just sort of keeping it going like that. And then having, again, like I said, I'm obsessed with balance, and then getting in somebody else, and if you feel it's getting a little too much of this, and then putting in a little of that. So I enjoy that, especially because my first two books, both The Zoya Factor and Battle for Bitora, are written like first-person narrative voice. It's like like an I voice. So when I did Pricey Thakur Girls, I was so drunk on the power of just changing the narrative, and getting someone else's voice. And I never went back to that first-person voice again because I enjoyed this so much. So yeah, as far as I guess if you have grasp of two languages, Hindi and English, then you will know how certain people talk, and that the way you speak or the slang you use immediately gives away what part of India or what part of the city you come from, So again, that's again an observational skill, and it helps. It gives the readers clues, as much as say your political opinions of a character would give a reader clues on, oh, this is this kind of a person, this person would have been sitting in Shine Bagh like for 3 months, so you know what kind of person this is just by that one sentence. You build up a lot of stuff in your head. Similarly, because of the slang a person uses or the intonation they have, or whether they are saying hum as opposed to meh, also give you cues on what kind of background they would have. So again, that's just kind of like sociology, I suppose, and studying people.
Yeah. Right. Thank you, Mukundan, for the very critical questions. Anuja, I had warned you that he's our in-house critical thinker.
Huh.
Right. Okay. So should we? Yeah. So should we take in?
Everyone. Yeah.
Yeah. Should we take in one or two audience questions? Anyone? We've got some questions in the in the chat box as well. Okay. Yes, Pandika.
Yes, my question is related to Baz because I'm such a fan. One of my friends who's in India training to be an Air Force pilot, him and I were talking about Ishan and the possibility that his character is based on some real officer you may have met or fancied when you were young. Is that true?
Yeah, no, I mean, like I'm saying, if you talk about Pride and Prejudice, I'm Lydia Bennett. I love officers in uniform. Like that's all she was obsessed with, and I'm totally like that. And like I said, I was a 4G kid. I grew up in cantonments. My sisters are 12 years and 11 years older than me, and very pretty. And so, when I was like about 6 years old, they were both 18 and 17, and all these young officers would visit our house, hopefully in the evening, to meet my sisters. So I got an opportunity to see a lot of fit, dashing young men, growing up. And of course, they all made a huge impact on me. There's also my mama, my Rajan mama was an Air Force fighter pilot, a very famous one who did very dashing. And, he's the oldest, like he's my uncle. And he's the one who actually influenced my father and all my father's brothers and a lot of our first cousins to join the armed forces. So Rajana is already like a huge thing in our heads, and he would do all these cool things that I put into the book. And his friends were similarly like that. And then there's my first cousins who are fighter pilots, and the son-in-law of my first cousins also fighter pilots. So a lot of them. Where I live in Bangalore, we live next to an Air Force base. There's a Yelahanka Air Force base very close to my house. And sometimes those boys will come out and they will go grocery shopping. Usually they have their own setup, but sometimes they'll come into like the civilian area and go shopping, and then my daughters will say, "Mama, you're shamelessly leching. Will you please stop looking at them like that? You're embarrassing us. You're an old woman. Stop it." So yeah, I mean, I clearly have a 4G fascination.
Thank you.
Lovely. Okay, Upasna, do you want to ask Next.
Yes, I would want to ask. Actually, I would start by saying that it was exactly 2 years back that I had read those Pricey Thakur Girls. And I mean, I think just as I think Devapriya, Professor, as you had mentioned before the thing started, that it was the book I had bought from Om Bookshop in Saket, I think. And that is where most of the books, I think most of your books would be sold. And I would always be fascinated by the cover of the books. And, you know, in those Pricey Thakur Girls, there is this girl standing and
Yes.
it is so. I think I even read it that it's like she who must not be named, like the person who's on the cover.
No, it was my daughter. We were on a very, very, very tiny budget. And she was like, I can't believe you're pimping your own child to sell books and all. But like, I forced her to go, and it was sorry, I've interrupted you.
No, so my question was actually related to those Pricey Thakur Girls only, because I mean, that is my favorite book that you've written. Actually, one of my favorite books by Indian authors. So in that, there are multiple scenes. I think I keep talking about these scenes in front of my parents as well whenever I want to make them laugh. So there is this scene where I think they're all having a table conversation and they're discussing whether Dylan Singh Shekhawat is, you know, suitable for Devjani or not. And, you know, I think Ishwari mentions that, you know, he has a really good backside. And the father says, what do you think, Devjani? And she says, oh yeah, he does have a good backside. And they all say, no, I'm asking about the guy, not about, you know, there is this entire scene, which is very humorous, I would say, and multiple other scenes in the book. So, I mean, how is it like, how do you imagine those scenes before writing them? Because there are so many small scenes that are really humorous and, you know, that make us laugh so much while we are reading a particular novel. So how is it that there are so many scenes, and how do you imagine, like, what goes into the process of writing such a scene?
See, Pricey Thakur Girls is the most autobiographical of my books. It's also very close to my heart because, you know, I'm the youngest of 4 sisters. My mother is the second youngest of 5 sisters, besides my Rajan Mama, who was talking about earlier. So there are 5 girls in that house. In our house, there are 4 girls. I've been in boarding school for 4 years, all girls boarding school. I have 2 daughters. That whole, I love female friendships. It's a very important part of my life. I hold on to my girlfriends the way other girls hold on to their boyfriends. You know, they're very important for me to have that. There's a lot of strength in just hanging out with your sisters and your cousins and, you know, your friends, and the kind of banter you have with them and the stuff you share, and it bounces effortlessly back and forth. And they are some men, you know, like Lakshmi Narayan Thakur, or who are comfortable in that space and are surrounded by women. And I think there's something about men who grow up with a lot of women around them, which makes them still very masculine, but also, I don't know, it sort of like sweetens them in a very nice way. And again, that the conversations there are drawn for life, you know. And this is me when I was Ishwari's age. Like I said, she's very close to me. I was completely obsessed with, you know, like you've been very polite and said, I don't know what you said. You said the back view or something, but I think Ishwari just says but. And Ishwari has this total butt obsession, and so did I. I think maybe I still do. But it is something that my cousins and my dad had to roll with the punches of and say, oh God, now Anuja's going to come in and, you know, say these things. And I think one of my like I had a boyfriend who said to me, why are you so obsessed with you should be more worried about what is in front of the butt rather than with the butt. And I'm not very sure I actually used that dialogue somewhere, but like I said, it's a very autobiographical book. A lot is drawn from life. There's also stuff about dialogue and trying to cultivate your ear for dialogue, like you cultivate your ear for music, you know, like if there's a tune playing in your head, you know what it sounds like, and then you're trying to replicate it on a piano key. You'll know when you hit a false note, you know it's wrong, and then you'll try again, and you keep moving with your ear till you find the perfect note. And I think similarly, when you're writing, it's a similar thing. You'll write that dialogue, and to you it may seem effortless, but I would have spent the good part of a day writing it so that it flows and it feels effortless. You know, that she'd have said it one way, and then I would have erased it, and then I'd have rewritten it till I felt it flowed correctly, and like people have really had that conversation around the table. And I think all the little things help, you know, the little aside, someone will be pouring water into a glass while she's saying this, someone will be saying, you know, I mean, it all happens in that Organically, I
Organic.
guess. Is
Yeah, right. Quickly, I think we're already at 7:45. See, I mean, there's still more questions, huh?
Yes.
So let's, Vritika.
Yes. Hi. I have to tell you, I'm a huge fan. I'm running on data, so I can't switch on my video. But I'm a huge fan. I've read all of your books, and I actually started with The House That BJ Built without knowing that it had a prequel. So my favorite character will always be Summer. And so my question was that when I read Baz, it was obviously so sad, and it was one of the saddest days. But my question is that both Tehmina and Ishan, they're such different people. They're so different. Like Tehmina fundamentally disagrees with the work that Ishan does at some level, right? Because she's saying that wars are not right, and all of that. So, do you think that if what happened didn't happen, they would last as a couple for a long time?
I'm not sure. When you ask that, I'm really not very sure because Tanina and Ishan have very different backgrounds, and but so I'm not very sure they'd have gone had that, the whole the long distance. I mean, not long distance, the long like a life partnership or whatever. But I don't think that matters. Like, I mean, every love story needn't be lifelong. It could still be beautiful and end where it organically has to end, and then there could be someone else and you have amazing memories and you move on or whatever. So because I think that the stuff that they were trying to bridge, they would have been trying to bridge, would have been too many things perhaps, considering everything. I mean, the mind boggles at thinking of her going to that Chakka Heda and sort of hanging out with those people there. It's a little mind boggling. And I think IRL may shayad it would not have lasted, perhaps. But not to take away from the fact that it was still incredibly enriching and beautiful and memorable. And a very important relationship, for both of them. So I don't, you're right. Maybe what you sense is correct, and it might not have gone on for life. Maybe.
But yeah, it was very beautiful. I'm like sorry if I got you thinking about that.
No, it's nice. I mean, I'm also very fond of those characters, and I think about them. So it's nice to know I'm not alone.
Priyal, did you? Yeah. Do you want to ask your question?
I think in order, Pearl was first, and then.
Yes, Pearl. Thank you, Aditya.
No worries.
Thank you for letting me come again. So I wanted to know, ma'am, first I want to tell you this fact that whenever there are a lot of people who don't read in their lives, and they decide that they want to read, come up and ask for suggestions, and my first thing that comes out is read Anuja Chauhan. Please go ahead and read her books, and those Pricey Thakur girls is what I recommend them to read. And I think the main reason is because they are comparatively easier to get into, and that made me think and read those books. I want to know, when did you decide to get away with the fact that you don't want to keep it in all English, you want to use words of Hindi, and you don't want to explain them. So when did you decide that you will get away with all that?
No, I think that is one. That's like a two-part answer. One is, by the time I sat down to write the Zoya Factor, I'd already written like Ye Dil Mange More, and various other lines, which were a blend of, be a little illogical and stuff. And so a lot of work that was in English, and that was working. I mean, people, nobody turned around and said, what does it mean, Ye Dil Mange More, and, whatever the other stuff. Oi, bubbly, like, is bubbly a name? Is bubble, does it mean bubbles? Or is it a Hindi word, which is a girl's name or whatever? So, and in advertising, it wasn't just me who was doing it, it was happening all around. We used to write in the ads, when I would write Ye Dil Mange More, I was not using Devanagari script. I was writing YEH for Ye, So I was already comfortable doing that, and it seemed fine, and it seemed perfect because you're trying to write as authentically as possible. And when you're writing a conversation between a girl who lives in Karol Bagh arguing with an auto rickshaw driver, it is really bizarre to write it in complete English. Like, what is this conversation? So obviously you're writing the book in English, so your dialogues can't be in Hindi. So then you throw in like a chal and a ki and a ka and a na and a oho and all those things to bring that Hindi flavor to the English. And then somebody gets said, oh, they're actually talking in Hindi, which is putting it here. So one is when people are talking in Hindi and you're trying to make it sound authentic. And one is what we always do, where we mix languages and talk, And to me, both are correct. And I thought, theek hai, it doesn't matter. Let me go for it. And if that means that my novels will not be published internationally, I don't really mind, because there are 1.3 billion Indians and there are enough people. I'll get enough to make my dal roti at home with that much.
I'll just add one last thing. So my friends is a huge Salman Rushdie fan, and this is one thing that she keeps putting out.
He does that.
Yeah, that how does he get to how does he gets away with it? And every time she puts up this question, yours is the name that comes up in my mind, and I am sure that maybe one day you will be up for a Booker if we can get away with it.
No, we are all allowed to dream. I can dream of Bookers, why not? But I mean, dreams pay, there's no tax to be paid as yet in the Republic of India. But yeah, Salman Rushdie plays brilliantly with language. He does a lot of rhyming. He's amazing at that.
Okay, Aditya, who's next? I think we have to hurry a little bit, no?
Yeah, I mean, however much time there is. There was Ritika, Pearl, and then Priyanka. I think Pearl asked, so it's Priyanka next. Is Priyanka here?
Hello, ma'am.
Yeah.
Yes, Priyanka, ask. We can hear you.
My question is, among the all characters, which is your most favorite character till now?
I have lots of favorites. I'm very fond of poor Shanu Faujdar because, he's so sweet and nice and all. So I like Ishan Faujdar a lot. I like Chachi ji a lot. I like Pushpa Pandey from Battle for Bitola. I love Pushpa Pandey. She's so much fun. And at that point, she was like the darkest character I wrote. I really had a lot of fun writing her. There's a lot of characters who don't get a lot of page time in the book, actually, who I'm just very fond of, and I think I want to go back. Like Anjani from Pricey Thakur Girls. I love Anjani. I mean, I really enjoyed writing her. She's a lot like one of my sisters and one of my aunts, and I love characters like that, so like that have like a lot of namak and a lot of, I like people who are very fond of themselves and are sort of full of themselves and think they have everything cracked, like Anjali definitely thinks she has everything cracked. Pushpa Pandey thinks that she's queen. Bonu Singh, with a wonky moral compass, is also someone I'm very fond of. So I love all those girls rather than like, my more goodish girls like Devjani Thakur, who's sweet and all, but she's a little goody. So, yeah. So I like
amazing. You are such an amazing. You're really inspiration to me. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, Priyanka, for asking a question. We've got, so in our team of core questioners, Arushi was there, and Arushi kind of got stuck at the hospital. Okay, she finally managed to log in. So Arushi, please ask your question. So glad that you could still, join us. If you want to just type it out, you can type it out also. Okay, so while Arushi just types it out, who was next, Aditya?
Shreyasi is next.
Yes. Yes.
Am I audible?
Yep.
Yeah. Hello, ma'am. I'm your biggest fan. And that is an understatement because I have instances to prove that I'm your biggest fan. I follow you on Insta, and since you've started putting pictures of painting your old furniture, I've also started doing that. And I have been to 16 Haley Road. many times. Yeah, and Dylan is my favorite character of all times. And when I was a kid, I used to dance on Oe Bubbly even before I knew you had written it. So that's how big a fan I am, and it's a great opportunity. I can't believe I'm speaking to you today. And ma'am, my question to you is that while you're writing and you're in the process, you mentioned in your interviews that after you've written around 25,000 words, you make your family members read. So ma'am, during that time when you have 2 or 3 contradicting paths, which you can take the story to, where the story will be heading, and you have to let go of some characters and some subplots, then how do you deal with the regret that comes of letting go of those subplots, and how do you decide which path to take?
Yeah, it's painful. You know, the first 20,000 words is very heady and very exciting because you just started something new. It is literally like that first 10-15 overs in a one-day match. You know, you're like, yeah, and you're like hitting chokka, chakka every day, you're writing, you're so happy. And then at one point, like suddenly, like all the field restrictions kick in, and then it's like slog and it's bad and it's not good for a long time. So that first 20-25,000 is very exciting, after which when you hand it out to your family or your trusted people to read for the feedback, that is usually painful because they'll always have something horrible to say. But because of my advertising training, I have become very good at taking feedback. I don't get violent or use abusive language or physically hit people because I've learned to see that maybe they have a point, let me just examine it and sleep over it and not get into fights with my family. So I do that. We have to take some tough calls, what Stephen King calls killing your darlings. He says, like you have to kill your darlings, kill your babies. Like you love something but it doesn't fit, so you have to take it out. But now I've learned to lessen the pain. I don't throw it away, I take it out and I put it in another folder. And I'm telling you, very often I write another book and then I'll and I'll pull out that person who didn't fit in that book and stick them in the next book. So in that sense, that as you keep writing and you have a larger body of work, you find that shayad the same way I recycle furniture, I can also recycle someone who didn't fit somewhere. I'll paint them and I'll put them somewhere else instead, So no thinking goes to waste, I find. If you really sweated over something, you wrote something, you found it vastly amusing, you may not be able to piece it there, but maybe another book you'll write, or another movie you'll write, or another column you'll write, or an ad campaign you write, you'll manage to put it in. Like in Clubby to There, there's a general called Bhera Mehra. When the Zoya Factor movie came out, they'd asked me to write certain scenes for them, and I'd written one scene in the movie where there is a bunch of old men and that Nikhil Koda comes home to meet them and he's talking to them and whatever. And there was one character there called Bhera Mehra who doesn't use his earphone or his piece. And when they cut the movie, they edited that out completely, but like I could use that name and that character and put him in this book. So I'm saying that don't throw away anything, keep it, and you could maybe use it again. So don't feel too bad when you have to throw out something because you could use it somewhere else later in life. And I think that's just I'm not just talking about characters, I'm also talking about things that happen in your life, which you think was a total fail and unusable, or you just throw it away. And then you realize, no, that thing also had its own place and you learn something and you can use it somewhere later. So,
yeah.
Yes,
especially if you write humor, things that were a total fail are often great to write about later.
Of course, yes, totally.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. But ma'am, one last thing, ma'am, my question typically meant that, ma'am, when you have 2 pathways which the protagonist can take, suppose, hello, yes, ma'am. So suppose if she has 2 guys she can end up with and she decides to choose one, then how do you decide which character the protagonist should go with?
That the clue there is in the protagonist. Knowing the sort of person she is, if it's a girl, if you know what kind of girl she is or what kind of boy he is, then you will know. If you follow them both down that path, at least in your head, if not in your writing, if you say, acha, is this going to work out? Knowing the kind of girl she is this the correct boy? Is this the choice she will make? So the clues are always there in the characters, the three characters, and how they bounce off each other, and what each character, what is important for each character, what are their priorities, what are their flaws, what is um, their twitch, or whatever, what's their obsession. Like, if you figure that out, then you'll know which is the right path, because you're the writer, you know where every path leads. So maybe it's a little more homework for you, because you may have to follow both paths in your head till a fairly long distance and then choose.
Thank you so much, ma'am. I love you. Keep writing.
Okay, I think last question. We are at 8 already. So, yeah. So, Priyal, you get the last word, okay? Last question.
Hi, am I audible?
Yes.
Yes.
So the book that I got really invested with, it was the house that DJ built, because the background theme of that was very similar to my family situation, and I could really relate to it at that time. So my question would be like, considering that many of your books, they have been adapted to movies, and some are like on the verge of adapting to shows and movies, what is your personal liking towards movies that are adapted from novels, and do you think that it would sort of be detrimental to the novel, because it would always be compared or kind of associated with that film?
Yeah, this whole film and film versus movie thing is a tricky one. As a reader, I'm never happy with any book that I really love being made into a film. I can't think of any adaptation where I'm like, wow, I mean, they really captured it, and this is exactly how I imagined it would be. I'm always let down as a reader. So I assume that will also happen with my own books, that I'll be let down when the movie comes. I'll be like, what is this rubbish? On the other hand, it is an immense amount of exposure, which means that more people are aware of your work. More people probably read your work. They'll say, oh, it's the movie bani thi, and they'll buy, because that is the way, let's face it, how we work as a society. Then there's also, you can't ignore the financial aspect, because you don't earn that much money writing books. So you can't afford, I'm not in a position that if Bollywood comes calling, that I can ignore them. I can't. And so there's all those kinds of pressures and pulls and pushes. And what I find, so what I have made peace with myself is by saying is that, look, my books are my truest vision. The Zoya I wrote, who lived in Karol Bagh and who went with Nikhil Khoda on Ajmal Khan Road, is the Zoya I wrote. That may not have made it to the movie, but for me, that's the correct version. That's what you kids call it, that is canon. So my stuff is canon, and if you want to read my vision, then you read my books. And if you're not the sort of person who read books, then enjoy the movie and tell your friends, and maybe somebody more will buy my books. So I've, in a pretty practical and pragmatic way, I've made my peace with that. As a reader, I still continue to abuse everybody who does horrible things with my favorite books, like most recently with The Suitable Boy. I'm just so outraged. What did you
Yes.
do?
Oh God. It was the worst. Anyway, I will not rant. Instead, one last question. Okay. This is the other Priyanka Mukherjee. Okay. After she asks her question, I will have a revelation. Okay.
I'm on 4% battery and my dog chewed up my cord. So
hurry up. Okay. Priyanka, ask your question quickly. Oh dear, I think she's frozen. Okay.
Somebody else is typing a question.
Yeah. So my revelation is that this Priyanka is my niece Anuja. Okay, and she loves you so much that I am very openly jealous. And I'll have you know, I've even dedicated a book or two to her, and she's still like she's like yeah.
That's not fair. You cannot put me in this position.
Well, okay, that's what aunts do. Okay, ask your question.
Yeah, I know I'm really shaky right now because this is unreal to me, and I just want to say that like on my 18th birthday, I was in 12th grade, and my two of my friends, they gave me Thakur Girls and The House That PJ Built together, and we one of the girls waited for the first one to arrive because they were supposed to give it in an order. And
and they felt like I would really connect with the book. And that was the first time somebody had actually like judged me and given me a book, and they could not have been more right. I fell in love with your writing, and I was trying to write something at that point, and I'm still working on that. But then so from that, in October to till the time I went to college in June, I had bought and read like the other two books, Zoya Factor and Battle of Bittora, and I was left with Baz, and my aunt gave me Baz like last year or the year before that, and I had not read it till the lockdown because I had no time. I'm studying architecture and I'm in third year, and so I read it and I was completely shattered because the first four books were so happy and so cute, and I'm a Fauji kid and I realized how sad that was. And so I'm reading the new book now because I was having a very stressful week. So I just wanted to ask that I'm currently stuck with the story I was writing, and I want to throw out the first script because I feel it was very childish and naive when I wrote it, and I've been working at it since I was in 11th, and I just want to know how to proceed with it if I want to start a new storyline or something.
Firstly, I mean, good for you. Like class 11, if you have like you've been working on fiction, so amazing. Don't throw it out. Put it in a folder. You know, like you're on WhatsApp, you'll say archive kar do. Usko aap just save it. Just keep it there. And so you know that you haven't really thrown it. You could go back to it when you're older, and you know your eyes. You have more perspective and more distance from it. You can judge it better. So don't throw away anything. Just save it and keep it. And write something new if that's what you're in the mood for. You know, if sometimes it's like wiping that slate clean gives you a sense, then do that. And also, I find a lot of you kids who read a lot are very critical of yourselves. You know, so don't ever have your critic's hat on when you're writing. Don't write and critique at the same time. It's impossible. You are going to trip yourself up so badly. You know, be very non-judgmental when you write. Just put it out there. You know, just keep writing it. Do switch off that judgy part of your brain. Don't go into spectator mode. A lot of you do. I don't know why you all do it. It's whatever. It's this generation or whatever it is. But like, when you're writing, just write. Don't do other things at the same time. Just write as freely and openly. Write like no one's reading. You know, do that.
Okay, and there's one more thing. It's very borderline creepy what I did. It was in first year, my first ever design, or second year maybe. We had to design a house. They wanted to make it creative for us, so they told us to choose one celebrity or anybody we admired, and we had to design a weekend cottage for them, and it did it for you. And I just wanted you to know that.
So Anuja, you see where my jealousy is utterly justified, right?
I had like spaces for all your kids. I had space for dogs.
I've got 2%. Please get me Tara's charger. This thing is going to die. I'm so sorry, but the puppy chewed up my charger, so I have to borrow my children's chargers because I have no charger.
Also, I love dogs, and I'm very, very appreciative of what you do.
Please,
for them.
if you all are 50 clever Ashoka children are watching, please, I've got 4 puppies to be adopted if anybody wants a puppy.
Oh,
Yes?
Yes, I think Track Changes can take this up as a mission. In fact, we should have made that instead of giving away books. We should have been giving away puppies. Okay. Next book event, you throw that in. You tell them that that's happening too. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to get.
No, but in case anyone wants, please make a direct message kar do on Instagram. Anybody 4-month-old, beautiful black, white, and brown puppies available. I'll fly them to you wherever you are. I have cut deals with all airlines.
Okay, lovely. So I'll also connect Amia, Priyanka, and whoever else, guys, just message over here. Then on email, I'll connect you to Anuja. So then you can really do the puppy thing properly, because they'll do it on the Ashoka page as well, and Priyanka's college page and so on. Okay.
1%.
So I think puppies, that's a great note to end this on. Okay. Thank you, everyone. You've been a wonderful audience. And Anuja,
you are amazing. Now this boy has come with the charger. Thank you, Derek. Now the session is over.
Well, he attended most of it. I'll have you know,
Attended most of
Anuja.
it. He sent me rude messages, private messages all the time, saying rude things to me. But as I didn't have my glasses on, it was a wasted effort by him. So it's fine.
But I think quite loyal that he sort of attended most of it, I saw. Right? Okay.
Then have a choice. Okay. Bye-bye. Thank you. Thanks, Devapriya. Thanks, everybody. It was lovely.
This was lovely. This was so lovely. Thank you. Bye-bye.